Hey guys, we're going to get started. Hopefully we have a few more folks show up. Good to see some faces returning from last week for our first session, so welcome back. Just in case you weren't able to attend last week, what we talked about was sort of preparing your presentation and the script of what you're going to say. And so today we'll talk a little bit about that, but more importantly, we're going to look at your visual aid. We're going to talk about what to have on the slide, what not to have, show you some bad examples, some good ones, and the presentation won't take very long. And then if you guys have feedback or want feedback, I see a couple of laptops, we'll make ourselves available to kind of come by and look at what you have, maybe offer some suggestions, things to change, etc. So at any point during my talk, if y'all have questions or want to say something, let me know. Just throw your hand up or shout really loud. First and foremost, the rule for the 3MT competition is that you can only have one slide, one static slide that has no animation of any kind. So kind of like what you're seeing here, just a slide that stands still while you talk in front of it. Okay. Some additional rules. You'll present the slide at the beginning of your speech, so it'll be behind you as soon as you get up. It'll be visible to the judges. It'll be visible to the entire audience. So keep that in mind when you're designing your slide as far as making it readable. You want folks to be able to tell what they're looking at, and I'll show you some examples of what may or may not work. Forgive our irony here, but no slide transitions. So no spinning text, no dissolving your images back and forth. Again, static is static. Please don't have anything moving. And that didn't work. That's supposed to be a sound effect. That's okay. So again, no sound effects, any kind of electronic media. So I know, for instance, we have a slide coming up where we've embedded a YouTube video to show you guys a presentation from the previous year. No YouTube videos embedded, etc. What's up?
What about pointer?
Laser pointer?
Yes.
No, sir. No. So you're just going to have to kind of speak. Again, you want your attention to be focused on the folks in front of you, not reading what's on the slide behind you. Okay? Less is more. So text and complicated graphics. So I know this isn't a full-scale slide taking up the whole screen, but let's point out a couple of things on this slide that we can maybe tweak and improve on. Anybody notice anything that you want to suggest?
Less text. Less
text. That's a definite, a good idea. Any others? Anything that you see that you think, well, that probably won't work? Ma'am? Too busy? Right. We've got arrows pointing all which way over here, kind of distracting your attention. Any other recommendations?
If the judges are trying to read that, they're not going to be listening to you.
Good point. Yeah, so you want your audience to kind of keep their focus on what you're saying, not trying to decipher what's happening back here. Just from a style perspective, the first thing that I noticed, this white text, I don't know if you can even tell that it's there. It doesn't really show up very clearly. So again, when you're designing your slide, you want it to be able to communicate the point you're trying to make. And just keep in mind the background and the text color that you have going on. Some of this is, just way too small to even decipher what's up there. So, yeah, all good ideas. Definitely very busy, a lot going on here. Okay, if you happen to attend our first session, we talked about in your argument and in your presentation, making that personal connection with your audience. Speaking about something that can affect their lives personally, why your research matters to the common citizen. Keep that in mind when you create your slide. This happens to be an example from a physics lab, a little girl holding the hand of a robot. That kind of little personal touch that shows the audience my research is even applicable down to the elementary level. It will affect the greater good. Okay? Feel free to be creative. Certainly we're not going for just white background and black text, okay? So don't feel like we're trying to handcuff you here and limit your creativity. This is a good example of sort of a basic, straightforward slide dealing with bacteria being used to create electricity. Got a little cartoon image here, but still very straightforward, not so much information that you're sitting there trying to figure out what's going on. So. And again, you want your slide to aid in the presentation that you're giving. You need to use your slide as a delivery mechanism to try to hit your key points, try to get your point across to your audience, however that may work for your particular field. Again, if that's animation, if that's bullet points, answering questions, you guys will know, obviously, what best applies to your field. We mentioned that a few minutes ago. Hey, come on in. So we spoke a few minutes ago about making sure that the text is legible, that the audience can see it from way in the back of the room, making it big, bold, and clear. If you're able to, try to project your slide on a larger screen than your laptop, just so you can get an idea of what this is going to look like on a grander scale in a larger auditorium.
Is it going to be that big?
It'll be bigger than this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll show a video again, and you can sort of get a perspective of the.
Probably like that one.
Probably even bigger.
Yes, it'll be bigger than that even.
Yeah.
Maybe in the preliminary it might be about that size, but if you make it to the final, it'll be bigger than that.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What is the expected size of the slides?
Size?
The size of the PowerPoint.
16:9, 3:4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a standard PowerPoint
Can I
ratio.
set up like centimeters, something?
I think it's just a default, whatever it's defaulted to. Yeah, that should work. And just keep in mind, when you're creating your slide, have your peers look at it, get feedback from other folks. Again, we'll be available after this presentation to give you feedback. And then next week, we'll talk about the preliminary rounds. Your judges will give you feedback before you move on to the finals. They'll help you kind of steer in the right direction, what works and what doesn't. So as many resources as you can. All right. So we're going to show you some examples of slides that both work and didn't work. What do you guys think? Does this one work or does it not work?
No.
No? Why not?
I can't tell. Immediately about the top.
Okay, fair enough. Not very clear. Anybody else? Reasons why this works or doesn't work?
I cannot see it harder, better, or faster.
Okay.
Hard to tell.
Okay. All right, well, let's compare it to this one. What do you guys think of that? Is that better or worse? Worse? Okay. Why exactly?
Oh, because basically the other one, it was like, okay, F-150, so it's a smaller vehicle, but it's out of steel. The F-350 is a bigger vehicle, but it's aluminum, and they're trying to say that it's harder, better, stronger, and lighter as a solution to pollution.
Okay.
That to me, the other stuff, I think is just too complex if we're addressing a lay audience.
Right.
That's just me.
Right, you nailed it. So, for instance, I have no idea what this is trying to represent. This plunger, Greek lettering, kind of goes right over my head. So I'm not exactly sure, and I'm sure the presentation will eventually address what this applies to, but for the presentation aspect of it, this is sort of not really going to reach the common person, the lay audience, like you said.
This
Okay.
was the person's revised slide last year. We go back to the other one, that was the first slide she submitted. And we actually, as a committee and judges, preferred this one. And on a bigger screen, you can see that picture, with the lights. These lights are kind of bright in here, but you can actually see this picture. And when she revised it to the next one, we were like, no, Well, we don't understand, I mean, I can tell that that's some type of dye going in there to compress the aluminum to make it a different, whatever they do to aluminum and steel and all that, I don't know. But it was more complicated, just like you said, for the lay audience, so. She had a great presentation. The two graphics at the top on the right-hand side just didn't mean anything to any of us.
Let's run that little exercise again. Okay, so here's another slide. Does it work? Does it not work? What do y'all, I'm seeing some people nodding their heads, shaking their heads. Too much information. I would agree with that. Any other remarks, feedback?
I would say you probably don't need text or just have the text alone. Just choose something like either the images or the text. Something
Right.
similar.
Yeah, so this text up here, I'm not even sure what that's accomplishing.
So you just narrow it down, you got 2 of each kinds of those, unless it ties in the project.
Okay. All right, good points. What do we think about this revised slide? Better, worse?
Better.
Okay. Any changes y'all would make to this? Bigger font, sure.
They seem to have reduced a lot of the clutter, but now it's just a lot of open space. So why not let the jury the same size as the other space?
This one here? Make it bigger?
Well, at least make it the size of the others. It seems nice.
Okay, that's a good point.
Also explain how the left-hand side is connected to the right-hand side, which seem to be separate things.
Okay.
His presentation last year was a presentation in virtual reality, where you look in those virtual glasses, and from going back and looking at old blueprints and stuff, they can make these, what am I trying to say, these buildings that were destroyed for whatever reason come alive with virtual glasses on. So that's why the building, and that's one thing if you knew the background to it, but that's why they show those buildings being destroyed and then being able to show what he's looking at in his virtual glasses. So that's the same thing as when you make your slide to tell your story. So these tell the beginning of the story, how he opens up his story. And then the images on the right-hand side is what he's doing, and then he closes his story, his 3-minute pieces up by talking about, because these buildings were destroyed, we still want them to be seen. Just because they're gone or not the way they used to be, we still want them to be seen, and that was his idea behind that. So it does help tell the story. So when you do that, think about that for your proposals as well.
Okay. All right, here's our last example. We'll go through. What do you think? You like it? Okay. What do you like about it?
It's compartmentalized, so you see what the issue is that they're trying to address.
Okay.
First, left to right, and then you see some sort of complex science part that they are hoping to explain to you,
Right.
and how they're going to accomplish that.
Okay.
The title, real clear, has the clearest title yet, to the top.
Okay. Better or worse?
I feel like I need to hear the talk.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That makes sense. So, just the smallest changes can make all the difference. So, we don't have a drastic change here. What we've taken out is sort of these three examples here at the bottom, and we've made images bigger. We've simplified it. Aside from some of the language here on the diagrams, not really knowing what these words are, I think you can see where it might be going, right? Okay. I lied. We have another example. Okay. So again, we have we have a slide here that clearly states what our topic is, using technology without our hands. And we see some examples of folks doing that, how they might use it. Is there anything about this slide anybody would change? Maybe something that doesn't work? No? Everybody likes it?
I think the bottom right stuff is kind of unnecessary, like a little redundant, but to click, to type, to enter password,
Okay.
those are all, I guess, subtypes of using eye movements.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have.
Okay.
Better separate the top and the bottom. Like, once I looked at it for a minute, I realized, like, here's the problem, here's the solution.
Right.
It took me a couple of days to figure that out.
Right.
There's a more clearly separated.
Time you're probably spending on the slide, not listening to what they're saying, right? So that's a good point. Okay. Better or worse? You guys like this one better? To your point, we took out some redundant images, right? A little bit. We gave a little bit sort of an equation here, a flow chart of how this might work. Yeah. Okay. So hopefully you guys are getting some ideas as to what, if you haven't already started building your slide, what you may want to do or what changes you may want to make. Okay, so that was our last example. What we are going to do now is we're going to show you a presentation from last year. Okay.
It was this, those were his two previous slides that were right before that.
Perfect.
Those were DJ slides.
Oh, perfect. So you'll actually get to see this see this live. And you can sort of hopefully get a perspective here of how large this might be, how big your slide might be.
Have you ever wanted to click on a button or type something on a computer?
Gotta make this bigger. Does it work? No? That'll work.
Have you ever wanted to click on a button or type something on a computer, but you couldn't? Because you are holding an object, or a baby, or driving a car. So basically, your hands were busy in performing some task that stopped you from using computers. And this is called situationally induced impairment. Imagine, users with a disability experience this every single time. And according to the latest survey by the Center on Disability, nearly 75% of the Americans with a motor disability are unemployed today. And this is mainly because they cannot work on computers. Well, this won't be a problem anymore, because my research is going to enable these individuals work on a computer using their eye movements. Now, primarily there are two operations that we perform on a computer, clicking and typing. So how do we achieve these two tasks using eye movements? I use a technology called eye tracking, which is basically a web camera-like device that's placed in front of the computer. This provides information about where on the screen you are looking. My algorithm takes this information and translates that into mouse movements. That is, wherever you look on the screen, the cursor is already moving to those positions. So, assuming that if this is a button and then you are looking at the button, the cursor is already over the button. But how do you click it? I've also developed a wearable sensor that can be placed inside the shoe of the user. And all it takes is a gentle press on the sensor to perform a click. So with your eyes you are pointing and with your foot you are clicking. But there's a limitation. Users with a disability in their legs cannot perform foot clicks. And in such scenarios, users click on the target by continuously looking at it for 200 milliseconds. And this is called dwelling. Okay? We heard about clicking. Next, How do we type? I extended my previous solution in which the user is shown a software keyboard on the screen and the user looks at different characters and selects them either with 4 clicks or dwelling to enter the desired text. And using this method, users type with a speed of nearly 16 words per minute. Furthermore, my solutions to clicking and typing cost a maximum of $200 compared to existing bulky alternatives that cost nearly $16,000. In summary, my research enables an individual to perform basic operations on a computer using eye movements, and this makes a huge difference in the life of someone with a disability. And in the future, my vision is to make this low-cost technology available on every single computer. Thank you.
All right. Oh, no, we don't want to do that. I mean, we can if y'all want, but all right. And I think that's going to be okay. Real quickly, I mentioned a minute ago at the beginning that we have our preliminary rounds coming up. If you haven't registered, what was it, 8?
We have 8 spots.
8 spots available.
How many of y'all have registered?
Oh, awesome.
How many, so y'all have all registered?
Couple haven't.
A couple haven't? So if you
Okay.
haven't registered,
Right.
get it done, so that way we know if we need to open up more spots. And then that way we can get our judges lined up too.
Okay. We will be having practice sessions as well. The registration for those will open on tomorrow. We currently have the 26th and the 29th earmarked. Again, depending on the popularity of those dates, we may be giving those, extending those as well. If you're not able to come to a practice session and you would still like feedback, if you didn't happen to bring it with you this evening, but still want somebody to sort of give you some objective criticism, you can send your slide to us, and what we'll do is one of us will take a look at it, and we'll give you some notes on what changes you might want to make. Feel free to take advantage of that as well. You can leave that up for a minute and let you copy down that information. And while you're doing that, as you were watching that video, what you noticed while he was giving his presentation, he's not looking at his slide, he's not reading what's on the screen, he's engaging the audience, he's making the eye contact with everybody in the room. And you can sort of hopefully see what kind of scale that slide, the size of that slide is compared to the speaker. So this is a full-scale presentation. And with that,
He was our winner last year.
he was the winner. Oh, there you go. Direct from the champion. Okay.
So when we sign up for the for the practice sessions.
Is that ERS?
If you go back to the ODAPs,
Admissions are going to be through Calendly. They'll be open tomorrow. The links will be on our website.
There we go.
Starting tomorrow, the links will be up.
and they're first come, first served, so sign up. There's only so many spots, I believe, because aren't y'all holding with those?
Yeah, I can't know exactly how many, but yeah, there's limited spots because we need to give enough time, for each person. So yeah, definitely sign up as soon as possible.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you recommend sending like multiple slides if we have variations, or do they usually give feedback and then be corrected and check in with them?
I think that's probably the most common approach, if you can just sort of narrow down what direction you want to go in, and then we can provide notes. But how many slides do you have?
I mean, none.
None yet. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many of us are going to be.
And I think ideally it may be best for you when you submit a slide, to maybe submit at least a portion of your presentation, like just written out, manuscript, so that way we can read a little bit of it and see how it relates to the slide, because we can really help that way, even before prelims. A lot of times we've never reviewed slides in the past before prelims. This is the first year we've done it because we really want to help everybody. And so a lot of the times at prelims is when you get your first critique on that, but we want to give you critique leading up to that. We try to help everybody. There'll be a handful of us within the office, and we will probably let 3 or 4 of us look at them. Does anybody have a slide developed yet that would like to share their slide or have us look at their slide? Anybody? You have a slide? So you could share, you don't mind sharing with us? Tell us a little bit about your.
After looking this one, I will
Do we need to worry about the copyright of the picture if we don't?
So you know now that you can dumb it down a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. Like, I'd be trying to read this instead of listening to you talk. Jen, do you mind if I hold this up?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think the pictures are great on it. But the same thing that we talked about Clay talked about on the first one, all the words, text here, just like we talked about earlier, we'd be standing up there, I'd be sitting there trying to read it and listen to you at the same time, and I wouldn't be totally engaged. So that would be a lot of that. And these down here, is that cholesterol? Is that concentration? I wouldn't know what that is. So, I mean, if you could somehow relate all that without some of this scientific stuff, would be perfect, I think. Don't y'all think? So.
One thing I'd say too is that your slide doesn't have to necessarily say what you're going to talk about. I think the most memorable slides are, there was one with cats, and I remember that girl talked about cats and things like that. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be a bunch of scientific stuff or anything scientific. Like, if I looked at this and it was only a picture of grass, I'd be like, oh, right, you told us about sorghum or something. So it doesn't have to be directly related to what you're saying.
Like the robot and the little girl hand, that was our favorite slide for the last 2 years. And I can't remember what it was. Do you remember? I didn't. But it was something about physics. I do remember that. But it wasn't, it was, at that time, it was so memorable, like being in the room and listening to it, because it projected the story. It brought the emotion to it. And that person did not make it to finals, and that's probably why we can't remember it, because we focused so hard on our finalists, getting them ready for the final competition, that we kind of tweaked their slides and their presentations and all that for them. But that was like one of the best slides because it was just plain and simple, and it helped tell their story. So, anybody else have a slide they want to share? Good, I love it.
Kind of silly.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so what are you talking about here?
Habitat destruction's effect on parental care, and there are 2 groups.
So number 1, dad, parental, their habitat, different habitats, different types of, are they the same type of primates or different?
The same species.
Same species? Okay. So, I mean, I'm sure whatever you're talking, that could be really relatable, and it talks, I like it.
Oh, that's great. I think you probably don't, is it several pictures? Yeah, on this one you could possibly even do just one picture of the animal, like maybe one that looks like they're holding the number 1 dad mug. Okay,
Yeah.
I like that idea.
But it's so simplistic here. I mean, and JC could even had a great idea there to even make it a little bit more simplistic. But I think that's cool. Anybody else? Bassie? Bassie used to work in our office, so we can pick on him a little bit. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Do you know where the practice sessions are going to take place? the only sessions. I would have said days and one day it's gonna be at the MSC. I think it's split. Did you hear that? It'll be on the sign up.
We'll have it on the website, but it sounds like one may be at the MSC, one may be here. In one day, so.
And are those like one-on-one sessions or is it like groups?
Yeah, there will be 2 of us. One person from the Writing Center and one person from the Center for Teaching Excellence. And so you'll have 15 minutes. They come in and give your presentation and then receive feedback. So it's just going to be like a very quick turnaround. We wanted to make sure we could fit in as many people as possible.
So the same time frame that you would get for the vision.
And then also the Writing Center is giving a working session next week, fine-tuning your public speaking skills. How many people signed up for that? Yeah. Yeah, so that will be next week.
And then we also, there's another one.
Yeah, right before ours, I think from 3 to 4, will be pronunciation practice from the oral proficiency, English proficiency instructors at the Center for Teaching Excellence. So it's sort of back to back.
Yes, sir.
Do you have tips for the title and should we write our title on the slide or just?
It's not necessary. You can if you want to. We've had slides from the slides that you've seen here to slides that just say the person's name and the title. We've even had those before. I'm not saying that those are the best or the most effective, but if you want a title across the top to kind of pull it together, then that's all up to you.
Just remember it is for a lay audience. So if you have really, you probably don't want to use your thesis title or your dissertation title if it's really long and complicated.
Right. Great. Anything else? If you want to stay, we have a few minutes. If you want to stay here and work on a slide or run ideas by any of us, we'll be here to answer questions. That's what we're all here for. But if you don't, then you're free to leave. Yes, ma'am.
Can you format the USB that we bring the PowerPoint slide on? Sometimes like a Mac formatted USB will work on a Windows computer.
In the past we've had the slides emailed to us in the past previous to the prelims, so we haven't even thought about that yet.
Okay.
That'd be a good question for JC. She's our IT person. That's one reason why she's here.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So, does anybody want us to look at anything that they may have an idea about or run something past one of us? Okay. Well, we appreciate y'all all